Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Retro Wrestling Room. We are here with a very special guest today on the podcast. We have the former ROH Tag Team Champion, a former WWC Junior Heavyweight Champion. We have the Cuban Crippler, the Underground Assassin himself, Ricky Reyes on the channel. How's it going, my man?
It's going pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on.
That's okay, no problem at all. How have you been doing lately?
Uh, well, being retired from wrestling, not much. Just working out and trying to be at home as much as possible was the kind of the whole point, So just learning how to learning how to try to be a good dad, I guess, is the is the current job I'm doing. So
Well, recently we had the retirement match of Homicide as well. You know, your former partner in the Rottweilers. What was that like? Seeing Homicide finally having his final match there.
yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. I didn't even know that it was happening. But I'm happy for him as long as he's healthy and stuff like that. I think it was some sort of medical issue that caused it, but he needed something to wind him down, much like we all do. So maybe this was like a blessing in disguise, and he can just hopefully ride off into the sunset happily ever after because he deserves it.
But you had your retirement match a few years ago now. It was with Homicide. I believe was it at the Monster Factory promotion?
Yeah, that wasn't my retirement or anything. I didn't technically have like a
No.
single retirement match or anything, but that was our that was our last time we teamed together. We had teamed together in Dallas maybe months prior to that. But yeah, that was my last Monster Factory match actually, because I had moved to Texas maybe earlier that year, and I had my final East Coast match at their event, and then came back and had that one at the 2200 arena, the ECW arena.
When you retired, was that due to injuries, or did you just feel like it was just you'd come to that point in your career?
I never actually made an announcement on really why. Uh, Really, a lot of things at home were developing. My wife's career was taking off, and that was one of the reasons why we moved to Texas. Was for her to kind of focus on, her own career in the fitness industry and stuff like that. And you know, being away from family and stuff, especially my son, it was getting harder on all of us. The thing about leaving and stuff when they're babies is it only hurts your feelings, right? Like,
Right.
uh, they're babies, so they don't really know. And he just got, older and was doing more things and, stuff like that. And felt like I wanted to be more a part of his life and what he was doing. So I decided to just go ahead and call it a wrap. I was out nursing a torn meniscus, and I had to take like a couple months off to let it heal up. And then in that time, I was home, because I wasn't training, I wasn't practicing because the meniscus is, it's just pain. It's nothing serious, But in order for it to heal, you had to stay off of it. So I stopped doing cardio, and I was just training once a day, like in the gym, trying to stretch it and work through it. And in that time, that's when my wife's, opportunity came up for her with me being home and us not having help with him, with my son. Uh, she became a little more relying on me being home and taking him to karate and, soccer practice and all those things that dads have to do. So I just, you know, and I was enjoying it so much. I think it clicked. I know it clicked when it was time to step away. When wrestling for me was my own selfish uh, drive and desire, and it was for me, right? And then I thought, I'm getting the same satisfaction from watching him succeed and him get better at something that I do, like when I'm in the ring, and I remember watching him do some drills, and he did this, like, he just got his black belt last weekend, so he did this
Oh, no.
like jumping tornado kick, and it was like everyone in the gym like stood back, like, they didn't expect that little kid to do that, and I was like, holy cow, like, um and then I just thought, I don't want to miss this type of stuff, and after 24 years, I was like, I think it's enough being selfish. And there was a couple times where he said, that he didn't want me to leave, and that hurt the most, so I just decided that was it. And I was off for injury. I had a bunch of shows to come back to, but I just decided, there was no better timing, right? Because all that stuff kind of whirlwind into that one moment where I thought, well, if there's going to be a perfect time, this would be that perfect time. So I was just happy to get out alive.
Is there a definite cutoff now, or can you see yourself coming back for like, reunion shows, or maybe, maybe with one of your students in the future, things like that?
That came up a few times. I even kind of hinted at a comeback uh, a few months ago, but I used it more to drive myself in the gym to get in better shape and, uh, you know, do different training that I was doing before. And I felt like I needed uh, that drive, like I'm going to be out there again. So I kind of just, you know, threw it out to the universe, and then it kind of caught fire. And then I really thought about maybe going back. And when it was came time to make the final decision, me and my wife, I just decided, after talking over with my wife, like, he was excited for it and wanted me to do it, but I just thought, this is gonna go, where this is gonna end up, and it's gonna cut a lot of time out from what you guys are doing. And I just thought that still, again, just wasn't fair for them, because this was me going back to being selfish again. So I just, yeah. So I don't see myself. I've had a few people, oh gosh, I had promoters from Greece and a couple from the UK asked to come out to do seminars and signings. And then I had a couple of like ReptoCon opportunities. And I don't know. I'm just tired, man. Like after a while, it's like, man, the last thing I want to do is be waiting in an airport or something like that, long drives again. So,
Well, going right back to the beginning now, I think I heard a story once of the first bit of wrestling that you saw was Hulk Hogan versus the Iron Sheik when he won the title. What was it about that match that kind of like stood out to you straight away?
man, just the excitement. Like I can see the finish where he's got him in the small
Yeah.
package, like the cradle hook, and Sheik is kicking and the people jumping around. You know, uh, I don't know, just pro wrestling. And that was when I was like 5 years old. So I can remember and how it felt still and how excited I was. And I just remember thinking, this is what I'm gonna do when I grow up. Like I want to be a wrestler, and I made up my mind then that, that's what I was gonna do. I didn't really know how, obviously, but I knew I was gonna do it. And that was kind of it.
You quickly went from say like the Hulk Hogan characters to more. I think I've heard you say Arn Anderson and Rick Rude. These kind of like workers wrestlers. What was it in you from like such a young age that kind of got attracted to these type of wrestlers?
Well, even as a young person, I can tell the difference between like the Crockett look and the WWF look. Uh, I mean, for obvious reasons, right? I always felt like the Crockett wrestlers were real wrestlers,
Mm.
where they relied on emotion from the crowd, and even their job matches were better because they were better workers. I didn't really care too much for the Ultimate Warriors and stuff like that. And although I liked the way Hercules Hernandez looked, I didn't like the way he moved in the ring.
Right.
I was always drawn to the bigger muscle guys, uh, as a kid, but I just thought like he doesn't look like he's a good wrestler to me. So I always had that interest in the wrestler part of it. So I remember watching uh, on ESPN Dallas, Texas wrestling, and that was when I kind of saw like, wow, these are real wrestlers.
Mm.
Like they're doing it, like they're fighting. So I was always kind of drawn to that style of wrestling.
I've heard the story when you were a kid, and you can tell me if this is true or not. That you wanted to try out for the school wrestling team because you wanted to be able to throw people like Scott Steiner. Is that true?
Yeah, actually, I did. I was on the wrestling team for 2 years. Yeah. Um, I purposely went. So going into my sophomore year of high school, uh, I was the first class that was freshman at our high school, where they changed like the grades around. And I remember waking up one day and I thought, man, uh, if I'm gonna be a wrestler when I get out of high school, like I better start learning how to wrestle.
Mm.
And I remember seeing videotape of, like guys like Bob Backlund in Japan and the Steiner brothers beating the crap out of Jushin Liger. And I just thought, man, like these guys just like own these guys over there. They're so dominant and so aggressive. And I was just drawn to them like as a team. And I thought, well, if I'm gonna be a good wrestler like these guys, they obviously went to through amateur wrestling. So
Mhm.
I I went out and went to the wrestling shed. It was like this tin shed in the back parking lot behind the between the baseball field and the football field at my high school. And Coach Ross was the old guy that was like the coach of the wrestlers. And I remember walking in there, and I used to play basketball a lot. And he's like, "This ain't the basketball court." And then I said, "Yeah, I'm here to ask about, uh, getting on the wrestling team. What do I got to do?" And he just kind of laughed and he said, "Well, during the summer, all the guys train here. Here's the times, and then we start practice, when we get back from school, so our vacation." So I remember that's what I did. I worked out with the wrestling team all summer in this tin wrestling shed, just lifting weights and getting my ass kicked every day. Uh, so and then that was the start of the UFC, like
Mm.
the early mid
Yeah.
90s. So a couple of the guys knew, you know, Tank Abbott, like
Mm.
wrestled, and then worked out with them a few times because they would use, amateur wrestlers for like training partners and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So uh yeah, so I was on the wrestling team for two. I didn't do anything special by any means, but it was solely to learn the legitimate wrestling moves, holds, and basically conditioning and technique was what I was looking for. So yeah, I purposely did that
Mm.
for pro wrestling.
During that time, say like the mid-90s, you mentioned that it was the start of the UFC and that was kind of catching on. Was there ever any time when you were training that you thought maybe that was a route that you could have possibly gone down?
Well, in 2006, when I moved to Pennsylvania, I had a buddy at the gym that wanted me to train him. He wanted to get into it. He was like like a typical meathead gym guy that was strong and thought he could beat everybody up.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, so I trained with them a little bit, and I wrestling wasn't doing too well for me at the time, and I had at one time thought about it, but it didn't get too far past that. When I was in high school, no, not at all, because I was again, I didn't wrestle as a kid, as a small kid. So I was wrestling with guys that were contending for state titles,
Right.
and these guys were absolutely annihilating me, like, without a blink of an eye, and I thought, "Man, like, if they're thinking about it, just thinking about it, I do not belong in that world one bit," you know? So no, I was 100% in pro wrestling, like, even though the thought had maybe, crossed my mind a couple of times because uh, do a couple of fights. I did do a couple fights because Inoki forced us to
Mm.
at the LA dojo, but we were training full time, 5 days a week, 3 times a day, with fight teams that were training at the LA dojo for when Mr. Inoki was there. So um, I did a couple fights, not that though I wanted to do that, but he thought his theory was you cannot display a real fight unless you've actually been in one, So for me, I was an amateur wrestler a little bit, so I knew the idea of like walking to the ring being nervous and scared and, at one point even just terrified, uh, of what's going to happen in the ring. But yeah, so not really. I mean, it was something that I had no interest in it. I even watched it for a short time and then was interested in it, and then it just passed.
I think Enochiism, kind of like this term that's become this big thing now. Um, it's got like a lot of praise, but it's also got a lot of detractors as well for it. But yeah, I think there is something definitely in that even if it is just amateur wrestling, kind of having that real like background, kind of or some sort of martial arts, I think it definitely does translate. A lot of people do become better wrestlers because of that kind of cross training.
I think so.
Mm.
I, was trained under Mr. Inoki himself, um, at the LA dojo. So a lot of times he'd come in, he'd work out with us, he'd show us a couple of holds and moves. And then he would just talk and we would just listen to his mindset on pro wrestling, right? Like we watched Takada and Muto in the Dome,
Right.
the UWFI versus New Japan feud, which at the time was their biggest drawing gate ever. Um, so while watching that, he was explaining to us what he liked and didn't like about like um Muto, how he came out and worked the crowd. He hated that. Like he thought that that was the opposite. That was the
Mm.
opposite of what he wanted. He wanted what Takada did, which was walk to the ring, stone faced, ready to fight, And so when Muto did that, he was like, that's shit, And so, and then we would watch, like something, we watched something taped on Raw or something. And I remember he Mr. Inoki, we're watching someone put a chin lock on Cena and is basically, like a rest hold, right? Uh,
Yeah.
and he grabs TJP and he sits TJ in front of him and he goes, why? Why like this? Like why is John Cena selling with his arms out? Right. So he cinches up a choke on TJP and his eyes come like popping out of his skull. And TJ goes to grab like Mr. Inoki's forearm from his throat. And he's like, see, his hands go in when when you're in this hold. And I mean, like later we laughed at TJ about it, but at the time we were like, well, that all makes sense, right? I mean, if you make it make sense, they'll believe in what you're doing. That was his concept and of pro wrestling, So a lot of the haters of Enochiism think, well, it's a boring style. It's this, it's that. It's not that. It's making the crowd forget that it's not real was the mindset really, So you just didn't want to have any holes in your pro wrestling game was that's what he wanted guys to do was to really step their game up and blur the lines of what Pride was and what New Japan was simultaneously, And so if they would have looked a little similar, then that's kind of what he was shooting for.
One of the earliest places that you wrestled in was IWC. Got some really early clips here.
Oh man.
Um, what was it like your time there? Because obviously this is very very early into your career.
Oh geez. There's TJP there. And we beat him up a lot. Uh yeah, well, we had left. The thing about that school was we had separated from Jesse Hernandez's school, which we all originally started at. Um and basically what Bill that was Bill Anderson's school. And the thing about going from Jesse's to Bill's was Bill had weekly shows. So he had a lot more shows, and then he had me as the head trainer of the school, which was a big selling point for me, instead of doing the drills everyone else was trying to make up and guys that weren't as good as me giving advice to everybody, I was going to be able to control that. So it was a big selling point for me and a lot of us just because we wanted the reps. We wanted to be wrestling 8 days a week if it was possible, you know. So having weekly shows and having training kind of controlled by me basically, uh, that was ideal. So
I know. Obviously we touched on it a little bit because you trained at the New Japan Dojo, the US. What the Japanese style has always been something that you've really been into, whether it be King's Road or Strong Style, whatever, what have you. Um, you got to travel to Japan relatively early into your career. I think you were only a couple of years in.
yep.
What was it like going there so early into your career? Because I guess it was kind of like a dream of yours, but to happen so early on.
Yeah, man, that whole thing really changed my life, I think, in a lot of ways. Um, my first tour for New Japan started out as we were just going to do the 2 weeks spiral tour, and then it turned into a month, and including the dome show in the middle after the first 2 weeks. So that you know, it was just a moment. Like I can remember everything about being told that day. We did 3 different tryouts. Our first tryout was with Mr. Chono, came down and he was looking for heavyweights and wanted to see what the dojo was all about. So he came down and we did a match for him. He liked it. The next was when Liger came to Ring of Honor. He came to the dojo for a couple of weeks prior to that. So we tried out for Liger, and then he really liked us in a big way. And then Mr. Uai, who was basically the head booker for New Japan, he came down, and that was our third tryout. Like this all happened within like maybe like a 3 or 4 month span because they were doing a lot of press days at the dojo. So those guys were coming into town for stuff, and then we would try to utilize that to train with everybody. So then they started sending over Kakihara and Makabe and um, Yamamoto and a bunch of the younger guys and Shinsuke Nakamura, Lyoto Machida. We were training with them every day for months, because they were just like, "Hey, go to the dojo for 3 months and then come back." So, I mean, it was just the whole experience. I mean, there's nothing like it. Like flying first class from LAX to Tokyo. Uh, you're like 20 years old, 21 years old.
Right.
You're as all the dumb things that you think we did. And,
Yeah.
we did everything wrong. And, because we were kids, right? Like,
Mm.
especially me. I mean, I was a poor, fat Mexican kid from Southern California that was going to step into the ring in front of 65,000 people live on pay per view. wrestling my idol, Jushin Liger. So, you just try to take everything in. Even at that time, I remember just about ready to walk out the curtain, and TJP turns to me, and he's 17, I think, at the time. Like that idiot had school the next Monday. Um, and he turned to us and he said, "This is what we came for." And it's just a moment that, like, I'll never forget, those guys, Brian and Rocky and everybody. So especially now that I'm done with it, I look back
Yeah.
and just think, like, it's crazy. I can't remember what I did last week, but I can remember October 14th, 2002, like it was yesterday. I can smell it. But yeah, it was just, I mean, we went from boys to men in that trip, because when we came back, we looked at everything completely different. Like, we understood how the business is supposed to look, how it's run professionally, how it's done to draw money. All that stuff you learn if you want to learn it. There's a lot of guys that go on trips, and they don't learn nothing from it. Because they're too worried about, you know, what they think they already know, as opposed to going there as a sponge and absorbing everything from how you train, how you dress at the shows, how you present yourself in front of fans, how you do press, what you say to the press, um, never knocking the company. That's what feeds you. It's just all these different things that I learned, later on, and it just unfolded one by one for me. So yeah, it was amazing. As amazing as you could ever imagine
Yeah.
that pro wrestling to be for somebody, was that for me. Yeah.
You got to travel to Mexico, roughly, well, it wasn't all that long after as well. So, you'd gone from this US indie scene to Japan and Mexico, all within this short amount of time in your young career at the time. And what was it like kind of going from those different scenes? Because I guess culturally, everything is just, it's got to be so different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the crowds, the passion and everything is similar, but yet so different. Um, for me, it was, when I was wrestling and I was a wrestler, my mindset was to learn as much as I possibly can of all styles.
Right.
Like, I never wanted to be a guy that somebody anywhere in the world wouldn't want to wrestle. So I just trained my ass off. I was in the gym all the time. Like, I didn't go sightseeing. I didn't want to do. That's where Rocky and I were very different. Uh, he's big time into stopping smelling the flowers, and I'm just looking for the gym. Um,
Yeah.
so we did not. There was times where we argued like a married couple. But in the ring, when the bell rang, we were on the same page, and that's what made us extremely successful for a very short time. How people, like, still look back at our run, as a big deal, but um, it was shorter. It had a short lifespan, but it was quick and, spectacular according to some people. But uh, yeah, I just wanted to learn all styles. So I was always big on, like, okay, well, when's training? When do we train? When can I come to the gym? So I was in Arena, Mexico every day, just working out with Negro Casas and Stalker and Ultimo Guerrero, Ricky Marvin. Like, these are the guys that I was rolling on the mats with every single day, in the afternoon. And then we go back to the hotel and change. And then you're off to the show. We're working 5 to 7 nights a week, um, driving in a small van with Dr. Wagner and Silver King, making these trips to Solar's hometown to wrestle him in the main event. And it's like, you don't even know. It's so bizarre. Like, you don't even like this. It's literally what I imagine rock stars thinking, like, going from stadium to
Yeah.
stadium. It's happening so fast, like, you can't even. it doesn't even digest. Like now that I'm away from it and have been, I sit back and just daydream sometimes about the stuff that I've done. And I think, man, like that was crazy. And to think that, I mean, I went from the Dome to a sold out Arena Mexico in a matter of months.
Yeah.
And we were doing Arena Mexico every Friday night, like every Friday night. Like I'm talking police, security escorting you to the venue every Friday night. Arena Coliseo, Sunday afternoons at 5, and then for TV Tuesday nights. And you're getting mobbed every time you leave the arena. And it's just like there is no other, I mean, the whole lifestyle was just insane. It's crazy.
You then joined ROH, which was the coolest promotion on the planet at that time. It was kind of like the workers promotion within the US at that time. We got some clips here we'll throw up. Um what was it like? What were your kind of like first memories like when you first got to ROH? And were you a fan of ROH before you went there?
The funny thing about my ROH run is, oh, I remember that match. That was in Boston. Uh, so the thing about ROH was I didn't really know too much about it except that it was another indie, but it was the indie on the East Coast that everybody talked about. Uh, so when we finally got booked was because TNA had pulled AJ and Christopher Daniels from ROH events, and then that freed up me and Rocky to come in because then they had plane tickets from LA that they could ent. And then we had done the first weekend they ever did. I think it was the Reborn weekend, and wrestled the Briscoes in our debut match. Um, so once I got there and got to see the guys and work with them, I was like, man, it's like fishing with dynamite. Like you can't have a bad match in this locker room,
Right.
you know. And then slowly we fit right in perfectly for what they were looking to do, right? Because it was more of a work rate style
Mhm.
type of atmosphere in the locker room and in the crowd. So, the fans appreciated the efforts. So we fit in well there. So I enjoyed Ring of Honor. It was fun, but at first I was just like, my main concern was New Japan. So that because I lived in the dojo, like I just moved out of my parents' house and moved in there. Um, until I moved to the East Coast, but uh, yeah, eh, we fit in nicely, I think, and I think that's what people look back on that time, like the '04, '05 years of Ring of Honor. I'm just happy that we got to be a part of that. We kind of, I feel like all of us together did it, but me and Rocky added to Ring of Honor's at least tag team division in a big way because we were the guys that could do that style, but we're not afraid of being booed while doing it.
Right,
So
yeah. I
yeah,
guess that's a really good point actually, because um even the people that were meant to be heels, a lot of them, because it was like work rate company, a lot of the matches, yeah, when you do look back, a lot of them, it is just cheering for everybody. So I guess, yeah, going in and actually being like a proper heel in there, it was like you guys, Jimmy Rave obviously got the booing
yeah,
response as well. But
mm,
yeah, that's a good point because not a lot of people did get that treatment really.
yeah. I always was a big believer. Rocky and I both. You know, it's got to be good versus bad.
Mm.
At least at some point, there has to be that one of the two is going to try a little bit harder to do whatever it takes. In the match. So that's where I think we excelled in a big way because just of our look, right? Like
Mm.
here's I mean, technically we're both Cuban, but that was our gimmick, but we were both Puerto Ricans is what I'm Mexican and Puerto Rican. He's Puerto Rican, but we play Cubans on TV. So, uh, but the whole gimmick of the Havana Pit Bulls was that we were small and mean, and if you see a pit bull and a chihuahua next to each other, the chihuahua is the baby face, right? I mean, so 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 we always had that mindset, and it fit. I felt like it wasn't anything we really talked about. Like once we kind of created the Rottweiler, or they created the Rottweiler group for us, it was more of these guys just kind of all go in this direction, and then we have an entire locker room that can go the opposite direction. So kind of worked perfectly. I thought it was a great idea.
When you were in ROH, there's a story that you moved into CM Punk's house when he obviously moved off. Is that true as well?
Yeah. So Punk, yes, that is. Punk had come down to the LA dojo a few times to train when we were doing PWG together, and he was obviously best friends with Joe. We became really good friends when we were in Ring of Honor together. Him and I. Uh, I mean, he was friends with everybody, including Rocky and TJ, but him and I kind of saw everything really, really similar, where it should be a fight and, stuff like that in matches. Um, to where Rocky and like some other guys like making more spots. We didn't really care for the spots. We were just like, you know, don't break my teeth, don't break my nose, see you out there. So we always had that kind of that respect for each other in that way. Um and he just loved New Japan as well. So yeah, so what happened was I had moved back out of the dojo and I left New Japan, and then I went to Zero One and Hustle. Uh so I moved back home, and then Punk thought he was going to Raw when he was getting all these tryouts in 2005.
Right.
Uh, I remember him calling me and he told me, "Hey, it looks like these assholes are sending me to Kentucky." Uh, and I was like, "Yeah, I told you, no one's gonna have you right up to their main roster." So he was really upset about it, and he told me that he had just signed a lease on his house for another year, but he couldn't live there. So he goes, "What?" He goes, "Since you're always down here," he's like, "why don't you just move down here?" And I was like, "All right, I'll be there in 2 weeks. I got a couple bookings," and then that was it. I threw a bunch of DVDs and my DVD player in the back of my car and all my wrestling gear, and drove from LA to Philadelphia. So yeah, and I moved in. We lived together for maybe 2 more months. I think he was still finishing up his run with the belt. So he was still kind of based out of Philadelphia. So, um, and then he eventually moved, and then that was it. I moved there, and I think around that time, I think Austin Aries had moved to Philadelphia as well, and then he was going to be heading up the school after Punk, and then that was it. I was in Pennsylvania for a while.
When you won the ROH tag titles with Rocky, what was that feeling like at that time?
It was cool. Nobody knew about it, like nobody. I think that was a Punk call because we beat them. It was in Philadelphia. I think that was the event that had Too Cold Scorpio on it. Uh, it was like in a Marriott or something, I think. But it was one of those things where, because the Ring of Honor belts meant like you were basically like the best wrestler in the world.
Yeah.
I believe like pound for pound, I think it was, more or less like if you want ROH champion, you were kind of the measuring stick at the time. So it was cool to have happen. It was cool because Punk was our friend. And it was also one of those things like we always thought let me rephrase that. I always thought we were the best. Rocky's too nice to ever say that stuff.
Yeah.
But I was known as the asshole of the team. Like, I'm gonna tell you the truth. Um, I always thought we were the best because we worked that way, we trained that way, and I think that if you put that much effort and work in your work and, you walk around with your chest out and chin up, that's all right. Outwork me, show me in the ring that you're better or that we're not the best. That's how I looked at it, because there's different ways you can get in the ring and feel like you got owned, you know. You just got to be good enough to understand and know that. But uh, it was nice because it was kind of like put us on the map. I think in the United States at least as being like the team to beat.
We mentioned ROH being like that really cool promotion at the time. You were luckily enough again to join another promotion. Well, I say promotion, it was the TV show Lucha Underground. This became like a cultural phenomenon, like all around the world. Again, it became this like the coolest place on the planet to wrestle for. What was it like to kind of do that once again for this new promotion?
Yeah, man, that's whew, look at that. To a mini. Yeah. um Yeah, that was just another crazy time. I always tell guys in seminars and in practice, uh, you shouldn't have to get ready. You should stay ready. Uh, you know, I always from the time that I started wrestling at the LA dojo, uh, I felt like I had a standard to uphold in wrestling. Like I really did. I felt like because I was a part of the New Japan dojo that I should be better than everybody else.
Right.
Uh so I worked that way. I wrestled that way. I lived that way, I should say, is ultimately what it came down to. Like I lived life 100% professional athlete, period. Morning, noon, and night. And it wasn't the most popular mindset uh because family stuff, um you know uh your personal life is basically non-existent. uh the most important thing to you is to get better every single day in some aspect of wrestling. So when that call came for Lucha Underground, it was like the perfect storm, man. Like I was firing on all cylinders. I had gotten back from Puerto Rico, where I was once again elevated mentally, where I would not be second guessed by anybody anymore because of everything that I accomplished in Puerto Rico under all the terrible circumstances. Uh, and I came back with a serious, serious chip on my shoulder. Um, because I spent an entire year in Puerto Rico and you know, I got in phenomenal shape. I lost about 25 pounds where I was like, I ended up floating around. By the time I got to Lucha Underground, I was only maybe 170 pounds, but I had leaned down to like 150 pounds, just shredded to the bone, like abs and everything. Natural, all natural. I would turn my whole life around. Seriously, like I went from doing the typical pro wrestler guy thing to I can do this. And I'm gonna do it right. And when I got the call originally from Conan, he because we had been in talks about me coming to AAA for years, but
Right.
he just, it was just timing was bad. They always had a lot of foreigners staying there because they couldn't afford to bring them back and forth. So um, he called me and said, "Yeah, man, time's up. It's happening. This guy will call you Monday." And I thought, "All right, cool." Like I didn't really think nothing of it. Had a really busy schedule as it is. And sure enough, Monday afternoon, this guy, Mark from the production place, called me and he was like, "Hey, man, we got an opportunity for you." He goes, "You want to come here to LA and read this script?" Or he thought I was in LA, actually. He goes, "Why don't you come down to the office and we'll, read this script?" And I said, "Well, I have to fly out of Philadelphia." And then he was like, "Oh, I thought you were local." And I said, "Well, I was from Southern California, but I moved here, years back." And he was like, "Okay." And then he said if I was interested. I said I was. I sent him a couple of videos of my matches. He says, "Well, you fit what we want. We'll be in touch." And by Wednesday afternoon, I had signed the contract, and I was technically the first wrestler that Lucha Underground hired.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so I was actually the first wrestler that signed to be on the show. So when all the press stuff went out, it only had my name and Christopher DeJoseph,
Right.
who was the head writer. Like, we were the only 2 associated with the brand, and at the time, they didn't even know what it was called. It was just like AAA USA TV show, you know? So, yeah, they called me, 001, which was my employee number. So they always talked about how I was number 1. But, yeah, what a time, man. Like, when we got there, we didn't even know what the name of the show was till we got into the building. And it was like we saw the posters. So there was only 14 wrestlers at the time when that first weekend. Penta, Drago, Phoenix, El Fantasma, their work visas got delayed. So they all missed the first show. The original the original first main event was supposed to be Phoenix and Prince Puma. And instead it was John Morrison.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then we
Never hear
beat the
that.
Yeah, and then we beat the shit out of Morrison at the end of that,
That's right.
and that's how we debuted, yeah, because we didn't know what we were doing, like, anything, no one told us the name. We got there, they said, "Hey, bring that gear you told us about. Here's your name." We had to learn our own names, and then that Saturday, we're just sitting around and they're like, "Okay, put Morrison through a table at the end of the main event, and we go off with you guys." I was like, "What?" Like, and they just looked at us and they were like, "Yeah." And I remember the one production guy goes, "Welcome to Lucha Underground," and then just walked away in like a movie. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay." And then, we got to make this count, right? So, at that point, that was 16 years into my career, and I was
Mm.
finally a part of like a TV show that was the real, TV show.
I'm glad you mentioned that you had like a bit of a chip on your shoulder at that time because it really did feel like almost like a renaissance for you. As a fan watching, it felt like almost like a Ricky Reyes 2.0 type deal. So I'm glad you actually, because we could see that as well, I think, as fans.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. Everyone has their opinion, but the fact of the matter is, when we started like Ring of Honor, right? I didn't know that there was things happening with other people that they just weren't, not that anyone has to check in with me, but like Rocky just upped and moved to Mexico City. He worked out a deal with CMLL and he didn't even tell me, you know. He was just like, "Yeah, I'm going to Mexico." And I said, "Well, when are you gonna be back?" And he was like, "I'm not. I'm moving there," and I was like, "Oh." And then we started the Rottweilers, and then Loki decided he wanted just to go back to TNA, and he didn't like what was happening in Ring of Honor. So that was started the downfall of, the Rottweilers group, even though we didn't have our big blow off of any kind. And we were the most dominant group, you know,
Yeah.
that some people say to this day, but so now Key's gone. Rocky's coming in maybe once a year, you know,
Yeah.
um, because of, he lives in Mexico. So, um, and then Homicide was so hot at the time that he was going to take the world title, but it was just Homicide. So I was left holding the bag of nothing, right? Like of like everyone just up and went their own direction. The whole time I'm fighting for all of us, they were just kind of like, okay, well, I'm moving on. And nobody really told me anything. So, I was like, okay. So then I left Ring of Honor and then, I was doing independence, which I was doing great at and having a blast. Because that was kind of catching fire in the Northeast and kind of created my own persona as a singles instead of being stuck as, one of the pit bulls. Um, so like long story short, I went to Japan a few more times and then Puerto Rico was where it all came together like mentally for me. Just talking with Carlos Colon every night, trying to pick his brain. I was the only one in the locker room. I used to like go sit next to him and ask him questions and about my character and what I should do. And he asked in the summertime, did you want to go home and come back in a few months? And I said, no. I said, I don't want to. I said, I have so much more to learn from you and the territory that I don't really want to leave. And I remember he looked at me and was like, well, you don't cause no trouble, so you can stay for as long as you want. And then he kind of walked away and then he came back and he was like, I don't really have too many ideas for you right now. He goes, do you have any ideas? And I said, I have some. He goes, come to the office and we'll talk. So I remember going to the office that Tuesday and pitching 3 ideas to him and then him taking the third one. And then we started off, I think September Negro, where I got the belt back and I ran till the end of the year. And then that's when I told him I would leave. Um, so anyway, getting to that point of Lucha Underground in my personal life, I had just gotten married. Uh, I had said that Conan called me on Friday. Well, that Wednesday, my wife told me she was pregnant.
Right.
So yeah. So my son is the first Lucha Underground baby
Yeah.
too. So um, I was doing well on independence, but I mean it was independence, right? So nothing you could really build off of because nothing was a for sure thing. Well, Friday that call came. We Monday the next call, and then Wednesday I signed the contract. And I remember my wife was like so thankful and just thought this is going to help us out so much because it was great money, it was consistent work, blah blah blah. It was some security for us. And I remember her saying like, I'm so thankful for this opportunity and this and that. And I said, no. I said, they should be thankful that they have Reyes. And that's how I looked at it. I said, I didn't sign for them. They came and got me, and they should be happy. So every day I went to work there, I had a huge Tully Blanchard sized chip on my shoulder where I was going to come in and there was going to be no denying who the best professional wrestler in that building was that night, every single night. And I had the entire locker room wanting and salivating over the fact of the idea of trying to wrestle Cortez Castro or Ricky Reyes or whatever, to the point where I was getting booked on independence against these guys just because they wanted that 15, 20 minutes of Ricky Reyes love, and I gave it to them. And I made sure that when I walked out of that ring whoever it was, Marty the Moth, Phoenix, Penta, all these guys, Ray Juarez, um, Willie Mack, Cage, all these guys, they bowed down to me. Like that was my goal. And yeah, it came out in the screen because it was real. There was no I was kind of tired of just being the other guy, I think.
Right.
And then when the other guys left, and then I was like, oh, people act as if I can't carry the load. So that's when I kind of came to the forefront of the crew that we had, the name of the crew, that the guys, and I took total control backstage. I took control creatively. I voiced my opinions for what it was worth. Um I was an asshole. I was very, very much not an easy guy to get along with because if you weren't going to level up to my level, then I was going to destroy you and prove that you don't belong here. So I was very protective of the brand. I was protective of what I was doing on the independents. I understood my role was to come in and lose to make the next guy. But I mean, I had guys after matches throwing up in the bushes in the back because they couldn't keep up and I wasn't going to let them, drag me down. So a lot of my work there was, a decade and a half of built up frustration
Yeah.
I guess, coming through the screen.
Do you feel like that was your um strongest period within your career?
I would say from 2012 on, I was un untouchable in the ring. Like, I look back now and think of the matches I had, the schedule I had, and, just the way I was living. Um, it's like I coulda walked through a brick wall. I felt no pain, I was never tired, um, but I think you need a lot of different things. There's a lot of different ingredients that you have to mix in to have that type of mindset. Um, and I could have just sat around and been like, "Oh, boo hoo, poor me," and you know, um, I could have kept along the whole idea of like living off of past glory with Ring of Honor and back in my day when I was in New Japan. But I didn't. I allowed that the goods and the bads to all kind of like fuel me to get better every day. And I started with me. I made that decision. I wasn't gonna sit there and say, "Oh, well, low key, he left for TNA right as we're building to Final Battle." Like I think he left in the summer. And we had this idea that was supposed to be the Hell's Gates match, and it was going to be, I think it was Gen Next against us in this steel cage. It was supposed to be like a razor wire steel cage. The middle of the ring was going to have like a steel plate in the middle. It was going to be gnarly. It was going to be a complete massacre. And when Key left, and then Homicide caught fire, and then Rocky dipped. That's why it didn't it changed because of that, but like the focus went more on Homicide just because he was the most over of the group, right? And um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, I had a huge chip on my shoulder, and I carried it till the end, really.
We've before we let you go, we've got to talk about your time that you came to the UK. You did a few shows for 1PW at the time. What was it like to finally come to the UK and do some shows over here as well?
Well, I had done, I think PWG did something.
That's right.
I was a Yeah, I was a part of that
European
as
something. I can't remember quite the name, but
European Vacation or
yeah,
something
I
like
think
that.
that's right.
Yeah, and I had did those weekends, but this was like, is it Doncaster Dome or
That's correct.
something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, those were fun shows because we looked at those events like they were almost a ROH TNA super show, because AJ was on all those, I think, Christian, Rhino, and then I mean Jody Flash and Johnny Storm, like the UK's elite, the guys that we all wanted to wrestle against, were there. Um, what I mean, that was a blast, man. Like uh those were some long nights, I will just say. Um
Yeah.
Abyss, you know,
Yeah.
till this day, Abyss ribs me about those weekends
Right.
that we had. Um Keeping the bar open, lately. But, yeah, those were some fun shows, man. Like, I'm not sure how they're looked at now, but those shows then, what was there, like, 1,000,
Yeah.
2,000 people?
Where?
Man, what an amazing time I remember we'd get in like Thursday night usually, and it was just people everywhere, in the show. The matches were, I mean, they were fun. Hope fans liked them, but uh, it seemed it was just really, really good. I remember those fondly.
Uh, Last question before you go. You had your own podcast for a while. I'm not sure if it's like on a hiatus or if you finished those. Podflex, I think, was the name of it, right? Or Podflex even. Um,
Podluck. Yeah.
Flex. Sorry, I had it right the first time. I shouldn't have questioned it. Uh,
Yeah, no,
but you ran it with Kevin on the show. Are there any hint of it coming back maybe in the future?
it's really up to him. I mean, he has 2 kids, and he's a head booker of the old promotion that I used to that we met at, Victory Pro Wrestling.
Mm.
I was the head trainer there for a few years and trained all those guys. Um, right now, it's really in his hands because he puts it up, and he back. We every year we text each other inappropriate, funny things about WrestleMania.
Right.
So uh, uh, he had just said that he's just too busy right now. I would like to do it again, even if we did like a bi-weekly thing or something. Because what we were doing the last, we originally started with just talking about what was happening, and it was tough because I don't watch pro wrestling. So he was kind of telling me, and then I was just kind of throwing my 2 cents in, and you know,
Right.
but what we ended up starting to do was talking about Lucha Underground. So we were gonna do like basically go back in both of our careers and talk about certain times. So he wanted to do a Lucha Underground one because a lot of people don't know the whole story on Lucha Underground,
No.
but I was there, uh, and then talk about like traveling to Japan and Puerto Rico and and all those things. So I would like to do it again. I'm sure at some point he loved doing it probably more than I did, but we'll probably end up doing it again.
Ricky, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It always seems a bit rude to try and cram so much of a career into like an hour podcast. But it's the only way we could do it to kind of get onto like all these different subjects. But yeah, no, I had a really good time tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you want to throw out there and plug at the moment?
I mean, no, I don't really have anything. I'm out of it. That's the thing about when I announced that I was done. I felt like this weight lifted off of me just because you feel so responsible for so many things, right? Like, I mean, for example, like the podcast, like you got to promote it, right? You got to advertise it. There's pressure there. I mean, people always look at, oh, it's where you were, that's what makes it important. If you make it important, if it's important to you, it'll become important to everybody else around you or the people that see it because they'll see the difference between a fly by night and then something serious, right? So, for me, no, I mean, I'm just I moved to Texas, because I hated the cold weather in Pennsylvania. So, I'm just living it up. I'm just enjoying every now and again. Follow, some WWE or New Japan stuff, just to see what the guys are doing, like Joe and TJ and, Rocky and all those guys. But, um, like even, oh, I mean, we even forgot I was Black Tiger at the very, very end of my career. Yeah. Yeah, and like that was a whole thing. Like, again, one of those kind of staying ready type things. Because at that point, I had turned down MLW had called me, and I didn't wanna do that because they were doing like a Lucha Underground, like, spin-off type
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, and, they asked me for that, and I was like, "No, I'm not gonna," "I'm not gonna do that." And then Ring of Honor had booked Rocky and I on their when COVID happened, that past versus present event that was going to be us reuniting for the first time in over a decade.
Right.
Had to be,
Yeah.
and we were looking forward to that, in a big way. I'm gonna say that may have started the talks of the Black Tiger thing because he was already doing the angle in New Japan where he kept losing, and
Mm.
then he started wearing the Black Tiger mask around his neck and hanging it on the ring post. Try to find that fire again, I think was the story. And then somebody had said something that his past is coming back to haunt, was haunting him or something,
Mm.
which was Black Tiger, but then the real swerve was gonna be that it was me, you know? Um, so it had its layers to it, which I liked. Um, and that was amazing because that was my little goodbye to wrestling, like, going back in that ring and having everybody there see Rocky and I interacting together. We had
Mm.
so many wrestlers come up to us and go, because we ended up wrestling each other in LA. Um, and we had so many wrestlers come up to us, Eddie Kingston, everybody, and they're like, "This right here," like pointing at us, like, "is my childhood is
Yeah.
falling apart in front of me." You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't make us feel too good because now we're like, "Damn, were those old guys?" But it did make us feel good, or at least it made me feel good to know that I hadn't been in California, since 2005, but what we did do, people remembered it, and it was always nice. And anything you do, any job you have, you just want to be recognized for your hard work. Um, you just want to be acknowledged for your hard work. You want to be appreciated, right? I mean, that's what we all kind of search for, in some way. I mean, you know, uh, like as a kid, that's what I wanted. I mean, and wrestling gave that to me, because it wasn't a popular decision in my house that I was, you know, gonna venture off to chase this wild, stupid dream, but it was what I was gonna do. And I mean, people ask me all the time, like, "Oh, what do you think about wrestling and this and that and that and everything else?" But I think if that's what you want to do, man, do it. Don't let anyone. You're gonna have the critics and the naysayers, anyways.
Of course.
Don't become one yourself to put yourself in that hole. And that goes back to, again, um, right before Lucha Underground came and right after Puerto Rico, like I had like some serious talks with myself where I was not going to let this beat me. And the next I'm gonna shove it down your throat and you're gonna remember. And I had 4 years of that in Lucha Underground, like you pointed out. I mean, even the 5-0 street fight with Joey Ryan that we had
Mm.
was our big blow off of a 2-year story. And I mean, I went through the windshield of that police car, and
Mm.
and again, I was indestructible. Like I was doing suplexes off the announce table to the floor just because I wanted the crowd to realize like I wasn't fucking around. This is it for me. And if I was gonna go out, you know, I was gonna go out that way. And that's when wrestling becomes so much more real than people think. you know, and you see those guys at WrestleMania and, those times and, all that stuff, man. Like it's a lot more real and less choreographed than you think it is out there sometimes. So, mm,
Yeah, thank you so much again, Ricky. I had an amazing time chatting about all the different things in your career tonight. We'll do a quick little wrap up now, but stay on the line. We'll do a proper goodbye off air as well. There you go, guys. Another amazing podcast in the books tonight. Um, you guys all know that I was a massive Ring of Honor fan and ROH fan. Ring of Honor and ROH, Ring of Honor and New Japan fan around that time in the year mid 2000s. That was my peak wrestling fandom, I would say. And then obviously Lucha Underground, which we've talked about before as well. So it was amazing to have Ricky on the show tonight. But as always, guys, please leave a like down on the video. We are now up to 3,708 subscribers. Crazy. But as always, guys, look after each other, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.